Greetings and welcome to Alienating the Audience, where we don't just prod science fiction, we check under the hood. I'm Andrew Heaton, the thinking man's nerd. You know what we haven't talked about yet? Star Trek. 3 episodes in, I think it's time we crack that mother wide open. Go balls deep into lithium crystals, that sort of thing. Last episode, we talked about the robots of Isaac Asimov, and I am still on an AI kick. I still want to talk about robots. So I've invited on 2 spectacular Star Trek aficionados to talk about AI in the Star Trek universe. And a surprising but also awesome conversation about the ethics of getting your rocks off in a holodeck. Afterwards, my friend Nick Sperduti and I recently got invited to perform stand-up comedy at Vulcan's Got Talent, and he'll join me to discuss our recent trip to the other red planet. You guys, I have been blown away by how much you're enjoying this podcast. Every time I read the iTunes reviews, I have to go weep in the shower for several minutes. I'm so overcome. So I thought, I'm going to drop a 3rd episode in 1 week. You're excited? I'm excited. I friggin' love doing this. Let's do it to the hilt. I know this is a weekly podcast. I know it's crazy to drop 3 episodes in 1 week. That's insane. But you know what? The people of this planet once believed the world was flat. Columbus proved it was round. They said the sound barrier could never be broken. It was broken. They said warp speed could never be achieved. But last week, I met the guy who played Zephram Cochrane at a vegan restaurant in East Austin, and he said we probably can. So then why can't we do 3 awesome, nerdtastic podcasts in 1 week? We just did. So let's beam up into the artificial intelligence of Star Trek. My guests today are Alexandra August. She is a podcast producer at Skybound and one of the 2 hosts of The Disco Trek. Hey, thanks for coming on, Alexandra.
My pleasure, Andrew. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And another Star Trek knowledgeable individual who is the main connection with myself and a lot of my guests, John Krikorian, who is the host of Trek Profiles and a warlord of Star Trek knowledge in his own right. Thanks for coming on, John.
Oh, thank you, Andrew, for having me on. But I feel like you're writing a pretty big check. The pressure's on now. I feel like I got to perform.
Yeah, you're a warlord.
Yes,
no one
I'm a
can
Star
hear
Trek
it, but
warlord.
John came in with notes. He's got 3 pages of legal briefs that he wrote. So I think we're good. But I wanted to talk to you guys about artificial intelligence in Star Trek, because I think that it's something that they deal with over the course of multiple series, and I thought we could talk about some of the issues that are covered by the topic of artificial intelligence, the themes that are going through there. But we can also kind of talk about the big ones in there. And in my mind, the big blocks of artificial intelligence in Star Trek are the Soon-type androids, so Data, the holograms like the Doctor and Moriarty, and then the slew of weird artificial life forms and TOS that are either giant computers that control civilizations or angry probes and that kind of thing. Before I go in, do you guys have any particular, who is your favorite AI, or do you have a favorite AI?
My favorite AI is probably the M5, which is the worst possible AI, even worse than Siri, which I didn't think was possible.
Nice.
So yeah, the M5 is my favorite because I think it shows an example of how fast these things can get away from you when you put too much of yourself into your work and you get lost in it.
And the M5 is?
The M5 is the artificial intelligence that they put on the USS Enterprise in the episode The Ultimate Computer.
All right.
And they set
The title alone.
Yes.
This isn't going to go well.
The ultimate computer.
The ultimate
is it
computer.
one where Kirk diffuses the entire thing by convincing it that it's illogical and that it blows up? Because he does.
Well, he does that several times.
Yeah.
Yes, but in this particular case, the computer
very bad programming and a lot of
the computer suffers a mental breakdown because it was programmed with the engrams of the human who programmed it, Dr. Daystrom.
Okay.
And he was, this young guy who had achieved so much scientifically, and he felt all this pressure to perform and create this next breakthrough. And he put himself under such pressure that he had a mental breakdown, but he put his mental state into that computer. And then the computer went nuts. And they
it's
were
the same thing that happened with Windows 98.
It is exactly the same
it's
thing.
the exact same story, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing that happens with Siri when I ask it to move an appointment, like chaos reigns. You know?
With Siri, I realized recently that there's some dark part of my being that is kept in check by social pressure. Because you'll watch these old, like period pieces set in old Britain where there's like a duke and he lives in a house and he'll yell at "Oh, Hemsworth, you fool!" and he'll yell at his servants and you go, "What a dick." I would never do that. I would never yell at a barista like that. "Siri, you stupid trollop! That's not the one I wanted, you dumb..." Oh my God, what darkness plumbs my soul. It's just the fact that you all can tweet mean things about me. Siri can't do that.
I feel the same way, though. And that actually is... I've shown on a Star Trek episode in an early TNG one. There's this new very nervous ensign in engineering, and she orders hot chocolate from the computer and she says thank you.
Oh yeah.
And I would totally be that person. I try to be very polite to Siri. Also, that the newest, maybe last season of X-Files, they did one of their episodes was the one that was largely dialogueless, was them dealing with AI, and the whole point of the episode was that the AI wanted Mulder to tip him for a wrong sushi order because they'd gone to this completely automated restaurant, and this AI through various different outlets chases them around the city, and they finally realize that they just need to tip it. And the line I'm paraphrasing is like, "We learn from you." And so the idea is like, if once we reach the singularity, I want to be on the good side.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So I have a middle schooler, and a lot of parents now have these automated assistants in the home, you know, the Google Home and the Siri and all of that. And there's this discussion that parents are having when the kid will go up to the Siri or the Google device and say, "Tell me a stupid joke, you stupid robot," you know, and people, "Oh, you have to talk nicely," you know, and the kid will turn around and say, "It's a robot. It's a box," right? And so we don't even have the words to figure out what are the ethics of this.
See,
right?
This is perfect, and I'm really glad that you brought this up because I think you're talking about Ensign Selena Gomez.
Yes.
And she orders hot chocolate, and she says, "Please and thank you."
Please and thank you, yeah.
And I don't remember who calls her out on it.
Geordi.
And the Star Trek computer's not. It doesn't really have a defined personality. It's the voice of
Majel Barrett.
Exact. Thank you.
Yes, I like to call it Magelbot.
Magelbot, the former wife of Gene Roddenberry, and also plays Ambassador Troy, but it doesn't have a personality or anything. It's not a sentient creature, as far as we know, like many of these other things. But I agree with Selena Gomez. I'm gonna kick in some Aristotelian ethics. So Aristotle would say that you want to, I think, you want to facilitate an ethical system in which you are moving yourself towards a better moral position, and you want to design a system that makes you more virtuous. Yeah. And so I think in that setup, she is encouraging herself to be polite, even though the recipient of the etiquette is unaware of it because it's not a sentient being. She is using that as an opportunity to make herself more polite, which I think is a good thing. I think that's a good idea.
I think in a simplified form, I tend to just try to be a polite and courteous person in all aspects. And I would have to work, because I've set up that system within myself, I would have to work and put in effort to be nasty to AI. And it would, like, for all the other like goofy reasons that I'm, afraid of the impending apocalypse. And like I said, I want to be treated well when our robot overlords eventually come. There's also just the fact that's how I've built my personality, and it would be extra work to do something that I feel is unpleasant and slimy anyway. And this is no judgment on people who do jokingly like talk down to Siri, but yeah.
I'm great unless there's a traffic jam and I'm given poor directions, in which case I apparently can just make the windows shake with my vitriol, or if there's a wrong sign, I'm just a jerk. That's the short answer. I need to adopt the Selena Gomez please and thank you thing. John, you were about to say something.
I was going to follow up on what you were saying about Aristotelian ethics, right? Which is virtue is a habit, right? That's right in there with Aristotle, right? So of course he's going to say it doesn't matter whether the robot or the AI has feelings or not. It's about us and the way that we put into practice the things that we say we believe. And so if you think that is important, that being polite and having etiquette is important, you should practice it regardless of the other person, right? Or not a person or whatever it is, right? Now, that's a very different conversation when you're having it with an 11-year-old and you're telling him that he can't be rude to Siri or to the Google Home or whatever it is. But we do our best.
That makes sense. Well, I'll kick another philosophical question to you then, because you already jumped to page 2, Alexandra, but that's fantastic. No, I'm glad you did it. So kind of kicking around. Like I said, I think the main exploration of AI is within Star Trek. The main ones are the Doctor and Data and all of the Soon-type androids that are there. So, kind of going through my middle Rolodex of data-oriented episodes, there's a couple in it where a human being is downloaded into an android body. So Ira Graves, who's kind of Data's grandfather, for people that are unfamiliar with the lore of this particular episode, Noonien Soon is the creator of Data. He is a human being. His kind of godfather or mentor, I think, was Ira Graves. Ira Graves hijacks Data, downloads his brain into Data so he can be immortal. In a more benign way, Juliana Traynor was Noonien Soon's wife, and she dies in a crystalline accident, but he's able to download her brain into an android, and he doesn't tell her.
Entity, man.
That crystalline entity. But he doesn't tell her. So in both of those...
Played by the amazing Fionnuala Flanagan, by the way, who is just stellar in everything.
She played the crystalline entity?
No. That'd be quite a trick. No. Yeah. Data's mom, the robot who didn't know she was a robot.
Right. Which is a wonderful kind of Philip K. Dick trope. Like it's like I love that kind of stuff, and they do that in Battlestar Galactica as well. But
it's really effective too. It's very sad when like just knowing that she doesn't know. It's sad when you realize what she is, because the idea Data is sort of searching for his humanity and his history is one of the few ways I could kind of relate to him as a human. I enjoy Data, but I've never been particularly like, I was never like particularly into his journey to be more human. It just I was interested in other parts of the show, but that was something that just broke my heart. It was just like, he was like finally found some parents, and
yeah. Well, he has a troubled family life too, because he also builds a daughter, and she survives for exactly one episode and then dies. Yes. And he has a brother who he basically kills. He deactivates him, but then deactivates and disassembles him. So that brother's more or less gone. He doesn't have like a very pleasant family life.
Data comes from a broken home, guys.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Although I wonder if this is maybe anthropomorphizing Data a little much. But in the episode with his mom, one of the things I wonder that an android might think about is if he's sitting there looking at mom saying, "Look at this newer model. She's so good that even humans didn't realize that she was an automaton, and I'm so the old and busted model. How come I don't have all these upgrades, Dad?
Why do I glow?
Yeah, why do I glow? Why do I have the eyes? Why can't I use contractions, right? Can I get a software upgrade? What the hell, Dad?
Well, I'm wondering with that episode, is it really Juliana Moore? This is kind of, or not Juliana Moore. It's definitely not Juliana Moore. Is it Juliana Traynor? Because in Star Trek, is there a soul? I come from a fairly materialist bent. I don't really think there is a soul. I think we're just, I'm different this morning than I was yesterday and all that kind of stuff. So I'm wondering with Ira Graves and Juliana Traynor, if that is really them, or if that is a simulacrum that is very similar to them. They would probably think they're the same. Juliana certainly does. What do you think? Do you think that like you can actually download a brain into them?
I don't think so, because no, I would say short answer, no. I don't think you can. I think there's a level of awareness that comes from a human person, and then I don't think you can. If we're talking organic memory transfer, that's the horse of a different color, but I don't think we are in this case. I always likened it to I forget the name of the DS9 episode where Jadzia meets all of her former hosts, because they download the memories into one of the hosts that Kira gets says, well, what is a person other than a collection of their memories? So in that sense, I think the Juliana droid would probably have behaved almost exactly as Juliana Traynor would have, but we're also made by our experiences. So this android's going to have very unique experiences to what Juliana would have had. So I think they probably started off very similar, but then the two paths would diverge. I don't think they're the same. I don't think it's the same soul person. I do tend to believe in that ephemeral oneness of someone, and I don't think you can.
You don't think she'd have it? So,
I think she maybe could develop it, but I don't think it's the original Juliana's.
Well, I'm thinking too. Actually, I have to backtrack. There is a soul in Star Trek because there's the Katra, right? So there is a Vulcan soul. So like
Katra, yes,
the Katra. So you don't think the Katra went with Juliana into the android body? It's a different being.
I feel like that's a whole ceremony, and I feel like maybe you got to be maybe you don't have to be Vulcan, but I feel like there's some words that need to be said. I don't know that just happens.
Yeah, you got to have the special Vulcan outfit and everything.
Right.
Yeah, the special accessories. But have you guys ever seen or read the original book Solaris? There was a George Clooney movie made about this, which I do not recommend. But the book that it was based on touches upon this in a really profound way. What happens is there's this planet. I'm not even going to go into all the backstory, but here's this idea. These human astronauts go to this planet, and there's some sort of alien intelligence on the planet. And the idea is that it's an alien intelligence. The very idea of asking, what does it want, is a human question, right? We don't know what it wants. And what it does for its own purposes that we don't know is it creates simulacra of people from each astronaut's past.
Yeah.
But the problem is that it creates them exactly as that person remembers them, not as the person was.
Right.
And as you're meeting these people that this thing is creating for you, you're finding that they're off. They're weird, and it's disconcerting. And there's a very profound philosophical point at the center of it, which is you cannot actually know another person because, you might have a great friend and you feel that you know them really well. And, you tell them that joke and they're responding in the way that you think they would respond, but in reality, they would respond a different way. And you sort of know that at an instinctual level, and you find the whole thing creepy, off-putting, and you start freaking out. Like, some people, when they meet their match in this, they freak out and they want to kill it. It's so disconcerting and weird, but I think it's an interesting idea that there could be something so deep that we can't even recognize it or have words for it. And it might have a biological basis, it might not. I don't know. That's beyond our scope.
Well, I see that, and that's one of the things that I find interesting is so Data's journey is he's becoming more human, or he wants to become more human, right? It parallels Spock. They seem to have kind of wanted a little bit of a placeholder when they designed TNG, because you've got in TOS you've got Spock who is coming to grips with his humanity but doesn't really want it. He at least at certain parts in the Spock arc he wants to get rid of his emotion and purify himself. He doesn't end up doing it, but he wants to do it, and he's bothered by it. And then, by the time you get to reunification, he's made peace with being half human and all that. I have no regrets, etc. Whereas Data's coming from the other direction. Data has no emotions built into him. I kind of disagree, though. I think he does have some emotions because he has a desire to have emotions, which would seem to be some amount. But he's got a muted form of emotionality, and he's got a much more heightened capacity to interpret data, listen to music, all this kind of stuff. He doesn't really care that much, and he's trying to become more and more human. And what I find interesting is with Juliana Traynor and Ira Graves, bam, immediately humanity, emotional drive, all that kind of stuff. Or conversely, whenever they're in the holodeck, when they build Moriarty, who's a wonderful character in Star Trek.
Yeah.
I prefer Moriarty in Star Trek over Moriarty in Sherlock Holmes.
100%.
And he has drive and will and a real animated pathos from the beginning.
I think, therefore I am.
And he's so
dramatic. I love it.
And so I'm wondering if it's a thing maybe in Star Trek where you can really only have the humanity if it is a full simulation of humanity, as opposed to if maybe Soon was doing it from the bottom up and he's trying to build from the bolts to the top. Whereas they're like, well, if we just have the supercomputer design a simulation of a human, it's similar enough that it can just keep going. I don't know.
That was something I always felt was relatively poorly addressed in Star Trek. Just maybe because it was just too heavy a philosophical question for the show to handle. But I remember getting kind of frustrated with the amount of time spent on hologram rights and everything towards the end of Voyager. Because I'm like, you guys haven't actually proved to me that the Doctor is anything more than a program who is programmed to be sassy, programmed to be rude, programmed to be grouchy, because Louis Zimmerman was all those things, which they have a whole episode about when they have the backup and Louis Zimmerman's there and he's an ass. Pardon me, he's a jerk. So they're like, oh, this
Robert
is
Picardo plays a great jerk. He does a good job.
Oh yeah, I love the character. Yeah, I love it. He's so entertaining, but I'm just like, he programmed the Doctor to behave this way. So this is why the Doctor is behaving this way. And I feel like they jumped over really, really proving that there was something unique growing in here, that he's more than the sum of his programming, which was one of their favorite phrases. And the programming has just gotten more complex. And you are, and everyone on the ship is treating him as a person, because kind of like Selena does with the computer. So we all just kind of accepted it. So then when they got into this whole, like I said, hologram rights thing, I was like, I don't know. I felt like we needed one more episode to prove that there was some real sentience there that wasn't just all of that.
But Alexandra, you have to agree that they did prove that Moriarty had agency.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, he was clearly there. Of course, my question is, what happened to him in Generations when they crashed the ship? I mean, is he still in the memory
He's
bank
in the cloud.
or what?
What about
He's in the
that?
cloud.
Is he backed up? Is he backed up?
Yeah,
backed up.
I hope Picard, when he's sifting through the rubble, looks like buries his fish and finds the Moriarty cube.
Moriarty is hanging out with Livingston the fish. That's all we know.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that because Moriarty's in 2 episodes, right? They introduce him and he beats Data, and then the second episode does this wonderful ruse where he he sucks people into his fake world,
it's
in the
the
holodeck.
Matrix.
It's
so
the Matrix,
good.
pre-Matrix, and then they ultimately kind of do it to him where he we'll give you a shuttle and we've all this stuff, but he's actually inside of it. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. What happened? I imagine he's on a
There's
show
a
someplace.
lost episode somewhere where Moriarty reaches the end, basically plays out this entire program that they put him in, and it's like, wait a minute, but it's 1,000 years later.
Yeah, actually, I got it. That's the end point for these things is questionable. Does Juliana Traynor have a built-in expiration date? I can't remember the episode whether soon is going to have her die or not. Because if she's around for 800 years, eventually she's
She
going to figure
certainly
it
does
out.
age, if I remember the episode correctly.
Yeah.
Right? So she is aging. Now, I don't know if they built in a self-termination point like in Blade Runner, like they did for all the replicants. I don't know if they did that or not, but that would certainly be a trick, I would think. I mean,
which sounds like something Soon would do. Because doesn't he intentionally... I can't think that Data's inability to make contractions is a failure of programming. That had to be intentional, right? Because if Data can walk and talk and man, a bridge, he can't master contractions, that had to be something he built in.
This may have been covered, but I feel like Lore was oh,
that's right.
Maybe let's not go that way.
Lore was very human, but very sociopathic, and they wanted Data to stand out.
It's kind of I feel like that's sort of that makes a lot of sense to me, that if you built a human that was essentially a superhuman, he's stronger, he's faster, he's smarter, and then you gave him emotions, eventually the negative emotions are going to get in there. He's going to feel pride. And I feel like that could go either. You could get someone that's very beatific, kind of like a Buddha. Or you could get someone who's like Lore, who's I am more powerful than everyone. Why am I not the boss? Why don't I have all this control? And so I kind of, again, it's been a minute since I've seen that particular episode where he meets Soon and they sort of have it all out. But I wonder if he didn't build Data with a little bit more innocence for that reason.
I think he also built Data with some flaws on purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the flaws that make things beautiful, right? And I think that was all part of the intentional whimsy and part of the design strategy for the Data android. I think it was all part of the burrito rolled into a nice, tasty sort of android burrito there.
John, what do you see as the difference between the arc and drive between the Doctor and Data? Because I do think they're both very interesting, but I agree they've got kind of different routes that they take with the writing in the series.
Well, I think when we get introduced to the Doctor is literally just the program that he is, and he's literally all just about the medical stuff and doing the medical stuff. And he actually develops those desires to do other things over time. I mean, we learned about his interest in singing. I mean, in fact, there's a whole episode devoted to it, and all these other things where, to leave sickbay and to control his own ability to turn himself off. Whereas Data is given to us as a package right up front, right? In the very first episode, right? It's all about him wanting to be human, and he talks about that, and, Pinocchio, Riker calls him. So I think we go on a more interesting journey with the Doctor than with Data. When you look at Voyager and TNG over their courses, because we're starting from zero, really, ab initio with the EMH, and we get, I think, a much richer meal out of it. So I really appreciated the artistic choice when they put the character together.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I don't think I answered your question, by the way, at all.
No. I'm just thinking aloud here. I feel like Data is a quest for humanity. Data is a Pinocchio story. That's what Data basically is Pinocchio, right? Whereas I feel like the Doctor is more of a civil rights struggle towards the end.
That's a good point.
It's more of a legal thing. Although that touches, I think, in one of the deep returning themes in Star Trek and AI, which is the ethics of the disposability of people.
Absolutely.
Or rather, the disposability of AI, depending on where you are on it. And then the quintessential episode of that is the making of a man.
The measure of a man.
The measure of a man. Thank you.
Yeah.
The measure of a man, where Data is going to be disassembled by Starfleet and examined, and they promise they'll build him back again. but Data's a little bit circumspect about that. And it's great. There's a wonderful line in it where Guinan says that humanity's always searched for disposable people and in some form slaves and that kind of thing.
Millions upon millions of disposable people.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that line.
Yeah, and I think that's something that Star Trek returns to several times. I feel like TOS, the AI, is a kind of threat of technocracy run amok. They've got a couple of episodes with the Apple and with Return of the Archons, both of which have similar plots where there's a big old, just room-sized computer, and it runs everybody's lives, and as a result, they've lost their humanity. And in Return of the Archons, the humans have become, it's the Purge. It's the origin of the Purge. The Star Trek beat everybody to it. But the rest of the year, they're all like just lackadaisical and weird and Amish. And then
Are you of the body?
Yeah.
Good day.
Yeah.
Peace and welcome.
They're kind of,
welcome to you,
it's
friend.
kind of cult-like, but it's in the West for some reason. Probably because they probably had access to a Western studio that week. Like John Wayne wasn't in town.
Yeah, it's like a very weird automaton. It's like if they took Disney's Main Street and took away all the fast passes and took away all the caffeine. That's pretty much what you'd get.
Yeah. It's a good way of putting it. It's and then the Apple's this kind of similar to that, except that the people that live on this asteroid are all in this kind of Edenic state. They don't know what sex is. They don't they're just hanging out for the benefit of Vol, who's this weird like reptile computer. So in TOS, I feel like what they're coming to terms with is technology might go too far and undermine our humanity.
Yeah.
In TNG, I feel like it's more of, well, what is humanity? Like, could we build if we built someone, do we own them? We built them. Does intelligence have its own just sort of cosmic privileges and rights that come by virtue of intelligence? And they explore that several times throughout that.
Yeah, you get the sense that Roddenberry thought, like, okay, I think this is going to happen. And I think this would be the time, by the time we get to the point where this is perfected enough for us to question whether or not they have intelligence or independent, well, not intelligence, but like sentience or some kind of self-promoting desires, I guess. I still even can't totally define humanity. It makes sense that this would be the time that they would be questioning, okay, how do we treat these people that we've created and that are like happily running on their own with their own lives and wishes and dreams and things like that? How do we treat them at this point?
Yeah.
There's a really interesting point that came up in Measure of a Man, which I want to go back to for a second, which is Commander Maddox, right, who's the guy who wants to basically vivisect Data. At one point, he stands up and he says, look, if this was a box with wheels, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. It's only because it looks like a person that we're even talking about this. I know, he's a total jerk face, right? But what I thought was
a compliment to Brent Spiner for being that handsome.
Is that a low-key dig at R2-D2?
Oh, yeah.
No, but I very clever. But one of the things I thought was really great is I was watching a couple episodes to get ready for this, and I watched another one called The Quality of Mercy with the exocomps.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right. Yeah. That's Geordie's got like a love interest, but she's okay, continue. Sorry. Yeah.
But they actually have the box with wheels that suddenly develops artificial intelligence.
Right.
And the whole question is, are these things alive? And they answer the question that they brought up in Measure of a Man to say, is it just because it looks like a person that we care about this? And later on, they have literally these flying boxes that they decide, those things are real and they have agency and we have to respect that. And they want to help us and they're choosing to help us with this, solving this problem that we have in the episode. And we have to respect it, but they are absolutely alive and we grant them that autonomy. And I thought it was just a wonderful bookend when you look at both of those episodes together, because it sort of answers the question that was asked in the earlier episodes.
You know what? I think I'm digging this Star Trek ethics vibe of like there's an intelligence threshold and then you shouldn't kill it or own it. Like,
but you should definitely have sex with it. Because I thought about when I read your email last night, I was like, or just kind of prepping, and I was like, ooh, I want to talk about Minuet and the scores of sex that people have with holograms, and the fact that there's an entire like course holosuites are built on the idea that you go in them and you holograms F. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting. They sort of straddle that, and they straddle that idea when they. I don't know. I feel like they deal with the idea of intelligence when they need to, but never when someone is.
And I'm like that brings up a good thing because the holograms, like, they go back and forth on him. Moriarty, I think we're more or less on board. Moriarty's a person in some meaningful sense. I am of the opinion the Doctor's a person in a meaningful sense. You're on the fence.
I think he is. I think the show could have given us I think the show skipped over actually unpacking that and breaking that out.
Oh, yeah. I would agree with that. I mean, there was an episode, I'm publicly doing this Voyager watch through and I tweet the episodes as I watch them. And there was an episode which was a fan favorite that I got in a lot of trouble for because I savaged it quite mercilessly, I will have to say, which was Blood Fever, which is...
Oh, the one where B'Elanna got...
where there's a Vulcan on the Voyager, and he's having his Ponfar.
Oh, right.
He's
And
having his
B'Elanna
mating time.
catches the Ponfar.
Right, and she doesn't want any part of it, right? And she's like, "No, get away from me."
Yeah.
Right? She doesn't want it. She's like, "I decline. Go away." Right.
Yeah.
And so the Doctor, with his like 50,000 gigaquads of medical knowledge, his solution is basically go rub one out in the holodeck.
He tells Varek to go to the holodeck, and Varek's like, afterward, Varek's like, "Oh, it's great, it's fine, I did it." Then you realize that he didn't, and he's still like psychotic behind.
But he makes this hologram Vulcan woman that doesn't even speak. She doesn't even have a line, and I guess it's because they didn't want her to have to pay the actor to do a line, because you have to pay them more if they speak on the episode.
True, yeah.
Sure, maybe
I thought that might have been a production reason.
She's a featured extra as the Vulcan side slam, but she would have been. Yeah.
So, but anyway, but that's, I'm aware of those kinds of things. But as I watch the episode, I'm thinking, this is not a good look. Right? This is not a good look. And this is taking it backwards from sort of the work they're doing in building up the EMH as a hologram. And then they immediately go back like, well, it's just a wild sex place, and you can do crazy sex things with these holograms. And you think, is that for real?
I think Hollow Pursuits is a prime example of that. And a couple of years ago, I kind of chewed on that episode and reminded myself, like, I didn't like it when I first saw it.
Is Hollow Pursuits TNG or Deep Space Nine?
Pardon me, it's TNG. It's the first time we meet Barclay. And he's like this socially awkward guy, and he doesn't have any friends, proving you can still be a dork in Star Trek, which sort of broke my heart a little bit. But yeah, like he doesn't have any friends, and he spends all of his time in the holodeck because obviously that's what everyone would do.
Yeah.
Like he creates he's a way different version of himself. He's way more exciting. He fences with number one, and he beats him. He makes out with Deanna.
Is a midget.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
Yeah, it's mini-sized Riker.
Yeah, so like he battles all of his male counterparts, and he bangs all the women. And then basically Counselor Troy, Troy, who was one of the women whose likeness he was using, is his counselor for the rest of and remains his counselor for like the rest of Star Trek, because he appears on Voyager, and so does she. And the main problem they have with this is that he's doing this kind of weird thing, but nobody points out that, hi, you're having sex with your coworkers, basically, that you have to work with, and now they know about it. Now they have to work with it. The thing is, it's like, oh, it's kind of unsightly, and you need this is unhealthy for you. And I've always left a horrible taste in my mouth.
The one thing that I've always thought was very strange when they're having these weird holodeck adventures is that there's no such thing as a locked door on the holodeck. Because how many scenes do we see people in the holodeck?
Put a sock on the door.
You got to put the boots outside, or do some kind of thing.
The amount of holosuite cleanup Rom was probably forced to do at Quark's behest just breaks my heart for him all over again.
I'm wondering with the ethics of having sex with a hologram, because you bring up a great point on that. Like, I wonder, one, if there is a internal software distinction between a sentient hologram and a non-sentient hologram. Presumably, I
kind of feel like that's what they operate on.
Presumably, there's a threshold. The Doctor doesn't seem. I remember the Ponfar episode, Blood Fever. The Doctor doesn't seem bothered to create a hologram, nor does he seem to want to well, now that you're done having sex with a Vulcan, why don't I take you? We'll play tennis. Like, he doesn't. So there, it seems that there is a kind of just this. There's no intelligence going on here, I wonder if there's a threshold there, or alternately, I wonder if it's almost like there are intelligences that would develop if they were left on. Because isn't that what happened with the Doctor? Is he's intelligent, but it doesn't matter because they restart him every time, and now they're like, no, you got to keep going, and he develops a personality as a result from it.
I think it's partly that, because they do address that in the Zimmerman episode, because the reason they use the backup, the reason they kind of activate him is that the Doctor is glitching essentially because he's gotten too complex for his original programming to handle. So they kind of have to reboot him. I forget the specifics of it, but that's the problem, is that he's been left on, and he's been used as a non-emergency physician. He was never supposed to be used that long. He was only supposed to be used here and there, which is why they gave him the data and they just slap on a personality on him and say, go. And he was kind of left, but, obviously has this unique situation in Voyager. I think either maybe in the writer's room or it just worked out that way. I think there's got to be some kind of rule of there is a limit to certain programming. And if you let a program get to insense, that's kind of when the magic happens and they become self-aware.
So there's some sort of cognitive evolution that happens.
Yeah, because you also would have to be smart enough as a hologram to understand what a hologram was. So they could also just not build in that ability and just sort of leave it there. And then they would just live as...
See, this opens some dark, if it's a question of how long you're running, And just if you leave a hologram program running long enough and it's sufficiently intelligent as a simulation, it develops a personality. Then all of the sex holograms are. It's basically like, guys, is this ethically fine because we give them amnesia every time we bang them, and that it clears their mind, so it's fine because they're just we just kill them. It's basically Westworld at that point, right?
Pretty much.
Wouldn't it be the Westworld?
Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah.
And that is not a good look for Star Trek, right? I mean, that's not what... There's something about Star Trek that is always aspirational. And we want to look up to these people on the show, and we want to identify with them, and we want to root for them. And when you go down that route that like, oh, well, I can not follow Aristotelian ethics, right? I don't have to practice this excellence in myself because it's just a hologram, right? That's a kernel of something dark, man. And that's not good.
I tend to feel like they built the holodeck before they really considered all the implications of it. I think that's a lot
humanity
of
never does that.
I know, right? I mean like the
particularly
writers.
regarding sex. Yeah, humanity always
regarding sex and porn. No, it's very cautiously forward, very cautious move forward. But yeah, I kind of more mean like when the writers sort of developed this device. I think that they just hadn't really contemplated.
Well, and there's definitely ambiguity there, right? Because they explore this with the Doctor, they explore this with Moriarty, but like Vic Fontaine in Deep Space Nine, I feel like he's just kind of a full package coming out where he's like, oh, welcome back to the holodeck. I'm a light bulb, right? And it's like, wait, hold on. So is everybody here? And it's almost operating like he's in an alternate dimension, and it's not, but it's almost how he functions. Because like, well, wait, what about all the other characters? Are they dummies? Are you trapped in this world where everyone's fake? It doesn't seem to be. It seems that he's interacting with everybody, but they're unaware of it.
There's a throwaway line where somebody addresses Vic, and he says something about the station. And they're like, what? And he was like, oh yeah, I'm programmed to know about the station. I'm smarter than you think. So I think there is something there. And they wind up sort of doing the same thing with Voyager and Fairhaven later on too. They create this. It's even grosser. Voyager always made use of the holodeck because they're stuck on a ship, so they would have these different. Season to season, they would have these different sort of like watering holes. So they had Sandrines. They had a tropical place in season 3.
The Tiki Hut.
The Tiki Hut. Yeah. Jamie got to rock around in a cute little Hawaiian dress once. I was very excited. And then later on, they developed Fairhaven, which is this Irish village, and the captain finally gets a boyfriend, and it's a hologram. Who owns the bar, and eventually she makes him smarter. It's also really.
I think I missed that one. Really?
Oh,
so she falls in love with the hologram, and then like does the what's the
and murders his fake wife.
Yes, delete the wife.
Deletes the wife.
Which by the way, I found ethically
Pygmalion.
A big fat problem.
Yeah, Janeway is ethically unencumbered when it comes to holograms on all fronts.
Okay,
except for the Doctor.
Harris writes the program, right? He makes this program and says, "Hey, look, I want everyone to come into this program and enjoy it, right? I've written it; it's going to be great, right?" So everyone comes in. The captain comes in and she's like, nope, make this guy taller and delete the wife and do this. And I was like, can everybody do that? Like, can everybody just walk in and start making wholesale changes in the game?
And they're also part of that episode too, is that they figure out, like the holograms cease. I don't know, something happens where their programming, it makes them able to see the doors open and stuff like that. And then they all run around and start having questions. And like, so does this dude. He's like, excuse me, what's happening here? Are you not from Cork? What? There is no Katie from Cork. I checked with my cousin.
Katie O'Clair.
Yeah, Katie O'Clair. He's like, there is no Katie O'Clair from here.
Yeah, this is getting dark real quick.
And she's
our lives
like,
are a lie.
And eventually she's like, you got me. I'm this. And I think they allow them to they wind up explaining to the villagers that like, yeah, you're on a ship and this is this and we come here to hang out. And all the villagers are fine with it. Harry Kim's got a girlfriend and she's like, I quite like dating a sailor or something like that.
I like being a light bulb.
Yeah, like, and then Janeway just has her hologram.
Do they keep it running? Like, do they? Because now that they've established these are life forms, like, do they get to live their life in the background? Like, it's like a screensaver program on Voyager?
I think they do. I think I mean, I'm sure once this goes public, somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's a part of that episode where they're like, we're just going to leave this running constantly, despite the massive power drain it is. And so, yeah, people just go to Fairhaven and visit and have people.
So what
Kate Mulgrew's on record is not liking that move either, by the way.
The ethics I'm getting from this are, if and when they invent a holodeck, gonna say I'd be interested in the sex. I would be on the ground floor of that.
Yeah,
I'm just like, I'd be curious, like, I watched porn one time. I was intrigued, but now I have to go in and be like, okay, before
I would play test that shit out of
before I download 900 women here. Are these sentient? Are they sentient? But then we reboot them, or are they? I'd have to. All right, you've compelled me. I'm going to have to read the fine print before I feel comfortable doing this. Or alternately, I'll just go on dates with them and be like, all right, here's how this works. At least when you reject me, no one else knows
that would
about
be
it.
You could program in consent. Essentially, you could program in the hologram to. That would be a way to work. God, this feels really wrong conversation to be having right now.
It's really terrible, right? Because the idea is you can go on the holodeck and you can have all these experiences, right? I mean, what does that? And this is going to sound moralistic, and I don't mean to sound it that way, but it really is a genuine question, which is that acclimates you to a certain way of being, right? And then does that make it harder to relate to normal people?
I think we see that though a lot I think there's a lot of people who don't. I feel like there's a lot of people who get hooked on pornography or hooked on some kind of sex substitute and can no longer relate to people in a real way. I think that's a big complaint about pornography in general, is that it presents these really, really false expectations about every aspect of mating and romance. So I think that's, I'm surprised. I really wish we need a Star Trek episode on holodeck addiction that isn't Hollow Pursuits. Just somebody who's just there all the time.
Yeah. No, I agree. This is great for ethics too. I'm thinking it's either Aristotle or Socrates. Is it Gyges' ring? I can't remember. It's basically if
the ring of invisibility.
The ring of invisibility, and it's a little bit more than it's more than like Lord of the Rings. It's like you're invisible from the gods. No one can see you. You are completely immune to any type of scrutiny from any being in the universe. No one will catch you. What do you do? And the holodeck's basically that with sex. It's what do you? Okay, you can do whatever you want, but these might be actual beings. Yeah.
Well, but I think the lesson of the Ring of Gyges, and boy, I'm digging deep into my memory banks here, and I could be completely wrong about this, but I think in the Greek philosophy, his answer is that ring would turn anybody into a monster. That if you get that ring and you put that thing on for any amount of time, you will turn towards the darkest side of yourself eventually. And we're humans, we're social creatures, we're meant to be with each other. We're meant to be with other people, right? Which I think is also a very Star Trek lesson, right? Is that, humanity is going forth, we're doing all these things together, we're better together, let's not be divided, let's be together, let's go forth, let's boldly go, and all that, which is great. So I think that that's something which the holodeck intentionally perverts in a way. With a little pun.
I think also, too, something, so I don't sound like I'm making everybody in Star Trek out to be these morally reprehensible computer rapists, but it's the idea. I think
that's the title of the episode. It's Star Trek: the computer.
That'll
rapists.
be the official hashtag for this episto It'll be computer rapists.
Computer rapist. Sorry, I'm really unsympathetic to Barclay. I apologize. Nothing to do with the actor, who's lovely, but. The idea too, I think if Gene Roddenberry were here, he'd be like, but humans aren't like that in the 24th century. We have evolved beyond those base instincts and desires. I don't know how much I believe that humans would evolve beyond our own programming that much. I love to believe that Star Trek could happen one day. This is an area of which I'm a little bit unconvinced that there wouldn't be a ton of Starfleet officers abusing that holodeck.
Yeah, well, I don't think, unless you actually modified the hardware, which is to say you upgraded human beings from what we are, which is designed to kill gazelle in the Serengeti 300,000. I mean, that's what we're doing. If when you're out in a crowd, you can watch people, and people we'll be talking, and just people are constantly looking around, and we're friggin' looking for lions. We're looking for lions. That's always there. I lived in New York the last 6 years, and it was so taxing for me to walk through Times Square because it's just my brain is going, how many tribes are here? There's a million, the sex thing hadn't really gone away. And it won't, because it's a primary driving mechanism. So it's going to be built in unless there's some sort of actual hormonal treatment or genetic treatment. But then that makes me wonder too if porn drove the internet. I wonder if the holodeck drove Starfleet. If all of the advances in Starfleet have just been from getting better and better holodecks.
The holodecks do get better and better with every single series.
And that's the supercomputers are just designed for holodecks. all the Risa grid that allows this wonderful planet to exist. All of that's just spit off technology from somebody wanking off at Quark's bar.
Well, I think we figured out something here.
Yeah.
But, we were talking about AI as a general concept, and I think one of the AIs that I think was really done well in Star Trek was in the TOS episode Shore Leave, which is basically a holodeck, but you don't program it. Right? This planet...
Bad idea.
Yeah. It doesn't... You don't say, oh, I want this adventure and I want, 15 slave girls or whatever you want. It reads your thoughts and then builds something for you out of its analysis for you that meets some deep-seated desire that you have to experience right now. And it's not the thing that you want, it's the thing that you need. And I thought, that's a much more elevated AI. Like, that is what you would want.
That has high EQ.
Yeah.
That AI right there.
If you were going to build a holodeck, that's what you would want. I mean, obviously, holodecks would be used for things like, tactical simulations and training and stuff like that. But for recreation, that would be the thing you'd want, right? Give people what they need.
So there's like the inner goal and the outer goal. The outer goal is I want to get my rocks off or something. But the inner goal is, no, actually, you're lonely and you're looking for fulfillment through relationships. And what you need is...
Which is the PG version, I think, of what happens to Barclay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. I think that TOS has all sorts of wonderful AI relationships it explores there. Like the ones that stand out to me, and you know what, I'll leave because we can come back to this in a minute. I'll leave like a very big looming thing that I've left out so far is the Borg, which I feel like is TNG's dark version of technology and AI and collectivism. But in TOS you've got Mudd's robots, which is a fun episode. I really enjoyed that episode where Harvey Mudd is he ends up basically being co-opted by this group of fembots that are planning on conquering the galaxy through service.
Oh, darn.
Yes, you've got the Normans, the Alices, and the Barbaras, which sounds like the most depressing 70s sitcom. I don't know.
And you have Harvey Mudd's wife that was built so he could yell at her, and they turn him loose in this kind of like...
Again, more AI abuse.
Yeah. There's also... There's an episode I really like. It's What Are Little Girls Made Of? Which is kind of... It raises some of the same issues with, say, Ira Graves and Juliana Traynor, where... Nurse Chapel meets her fiance, or her former fiance, her ex-fiance, on this planet, and it's Roger Corby, and he's this brilliant doctor, and he's got like basically Lurch from the Addams Family as his assistant. His name's Ruck, and he's this like 40,000-year-old android that was left behind by the old ones or the elder ones or whatever they are. And then there's also like the resident hottie he built, who falls in love with him. And he's of course downloaded himself into the body of this android and all of that. So it brings up the whole like simulacrum thing and all of those different things. And then you've got Landru and Vol that we talked about earlier. Am I missing any big holes in TOS, John? You know TOS a lot better than I do.
Well, the one that I think of right off the top of my head is the one where it's going to come to Requiem for Methuselah. Where you have this man who essentially never dies, right? And he is actually the template from which in the biblical story Methuselah came from, right? And he's lived like thousands of lives, right, Alexandra?
I think so, yeah.
He's like all these great people throughout history. And he ends up building a robot that could love him, right? That could be his companion because every human that he would know will die, right? So he has to have this everlasting android to be his companion, and she doesn't know. Right. Again, it's that same story from TNG, right? She doesn't know what she is. Kirk and Spock and McCoy come down to the planet. And of course, Kirk ends up falling in love with her. And then but throughout the course of the story, they find out that she is an android and she finds out she's an android. And if memory serves...
So I haven't seen that. What, does she leave with Kirk? Or does she decide to stay behind? Or does she die?
She stays behind on the planet, and Kirk is so distraught by the thing. If I'm remembering correctly, one of the very last scenes is Spock goes into Kirk's office and erases her from his memory.
Oh, what? Right? If only, man. Oh, my goodness.
I'm pretty sure it's this one. I didn't watch that one.
Wish I had such a friend.
Seriously, right?
And I think to myself, man, oh man, could you imagine having a bud like that being like, dude, I went on this date last night. It was a tire fire.
Yep.
Forget.
That'd be fantastic. Right now I just have scotch, but that is only a temporary solution.
Kirk clearly didn't get the oxytocin memo, first of all. But man, that is real. Just don't let anyone tell you that effect is not real. It's real, at least for women. And I could fully make use a lot of a Vulcan in a lot of those situations.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Actually, this brings up another ethical conundrum. If you're making if you are designing and building a sentient life form, if you give it some sort of prerogative that's self-serving, is that ethical? Because it didn't ask to have that in it, right? So, like for example, there's one in Voyager called, I think it's Warhead.
Dreadnought.
Is it Dreadnought?
Oh, well, there might also...
No, there's-
Are you talking about the one with B'Elanna and she finds the Cardassian missile that she...
Yeah, there's the missile and there's
I'm
an AI
thinking of the
in it.
smart bomb. Yeah, is that
That's
Warhead?
Warhead,
It's
yeah.
Warhead. Yeah. So
No, I think it's Sorry, we don't need to argue. It's season 2. It's
You could be right. I don't know.
Well,
I'm not good with those titles.
There might be if it's an early season one. It's
the
season
one I'm thinking of is not Cardassian. So there might be.
Oh,
be two
yeah. I
of them.
think now that you mentioned, I think you're right. I think there's 2, which is hilarious.
Yeah, so they were like didn't quite get enough of that smart bomb thing, but in the one I'm thinking of, it's like some civilization has designed sentient bombs that are meant to fly and destroy their target, and they find the bomb on a planet. The Doctor finds the bomb, talks to the bomb, and is like, "This thing has a personality. We should bring it back on the ship," not knowing it's a bomb.
Doctor,
because he's gonna like play tennis with it or whatever. And then it's like, it realizes it's a bomb, and it like hijacks the ship, and it's like, "I'm gonna blow you up unless you deliver me to my payload target so that I can destroy them." And they figure out, well, actually, what happened was the species made peace with the other species, and it sent out a software update to all the smart bombs, going, "You know what? Don't blow up this people. We're now." We're now at peace with them. But the smart bomb, for whatever reason, has a malfunction, doesn't believe it. And they ultimately do convince the smart bomb, and the smart bomb finds all of the other delinquent bombs and blows them up. But it's kind of like, I don't know. Like, if you give it a personality, it's weird. If you give it like just sheer intelligence, I don't mind that much. If it's got like a personality, I'd be like, you're building a suicide bomber. You're literally creating a suicide bomber. That's what you're doing in that scenario.
Yeah. I don't think we're meant to think of those warring species as heroes by any stretch of the
I don't think that they're at least this is a situation that Voyager's encountering them rather than building them.
It's so crazy. The reason, it's interesting that you're saying this, because the 2 episodes I was going to bring up about AI, if we had the time, were Dreadnought.
Okay, so what's Dreadnought?
Dreadnought is a 2nd season episode. This is back when they're still finding other people who've been dragged out, other things have been dragged out by the caretaker. B'Elanna during her time in the Maquis had found or just like captured before it destroyed them a smart missile called Dreadnought, and it was Cardassian design, obviously designed to search and destroy Maquis. She reprogrammed it with her voice and sent it off to destroy Cardassians, but it got dragged out by the caretaker in some capacity. So she finds it again, and she's working with it, and she can't stop it from exploding. She can't undo her own programming. So eventually she has to outsmart the smart bomb. And then that same season, I want to say like 7 episodes later, there's an episode called Prototype, where she discovers a robot, and it's very like classic 60s robot, chrome head, no feet, like a fake
it's got a dent in it. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
Eyes, like no, like
nothing. A kid's toy.
Right.
You basically, it's not Data. So she finds this and she wants to repair it, and Janeway's like, "Hi, don't. Prime directive, maybe not." And she's like, "But I want to," and so she does it anyway. And sure enough, the robot was designed in service, and then when the species that designed it for weaponry, made peace with the people, there was no use for the robots anymore, so the robots overthrew them and killed them all. And B'Elanna's like, "What have I done?" When 10 minutes into the episode, you're like, well, this isn't going to go well. It's really very, very similar to Warhead. That's interesting.
But this is the same conversation we're actually having right now today when we're talking about some of these AIs that we have now, right? I mean, there's a story going around, and this comes from an academic. It's about the paperclip optimizer. Have you heard this story, Heaton? Do you know this one?
No.
That
Clippy? My old friend.
Not Clippy.
It's the Microsoft one?
Much worse than Microsoft Word Clippy. If you built a machine that all it wanted to do was to make paper clips, and if you gave it the correct amount of programming and it had enough agency, right, you can easily construct a narrative where it destroys the world and turns the entire world, including all the people, into paper clips, right?
Yeah.
And so the question is, what...
Sounds like Clippy.
It kind of does, doesn't it? What do you have to do to design these things such that they can make choices, but that they don't actually have that unique human quality of agency, right? That sense of self-awareness, right?
Like, how do you get to the point where they can do things without us making them do every single step? But how do you pull it back from them not becoming so independent that they eventually stop being under your control?
Right. There have to be guardrails on these things, right? And we learned in the episode where they elementary dear Data that the holodeck does not have guardrails. I mean, when whoever it is, I think LaForge says to the computer, design an opponent that can defeat Data. Up on the bridge, I remember there's a quick line where they're like, Captain, there's a power surge. We're losing power on all decks or something, because the computer's like trying to construct Moriarty.
And it takes Geordi, the chief engineer, 40 minutes to figure out,
my bad.
Run system scan. What? Yeah.
So you just got to be really careful because they can give the holodeck these commands to create these things, and it will literally run amok and do whatever crazy thing. I mean, if I'm
talking, it was for porn.
Yeah.
No one thought about it.
It's like that song.
Where's Barkley? Oh, Barkley, just him it in, like limited to 8 people. Yeah.
There's a wonderful song in the musical Avenue Q called "The Internet Is for Porn." I encourage everyone to go look it up and listen to it. Absolutely hilarious, worth your time.
Yeah, agreed. What was the other episode you wanted to bring up, Alexandra? You brought up Dreadnought, and you said a couple.
Oh, it was really just Dreadnought and Prototype, the two I wanted to hit, just because I think I watched them recently, and their season 2 is probably my favorite season of Voyager. And B'Elanna has a couple of really good episodes, and those are 2 of ones that I really... And I was such a Janeway-aholic. I tended to sort of be like, oh, Janeway's not really in this episode, pfft, whatever. But I really liked those.
Nice. John, are there any episodes that stand out for you?
No, I think we've hit on all of them. I'm just looking at my notes here. I rewatched some of these. The only one we didn't really talk about, which I think actually has a little bit more of a positive spin on AI, is For the World is Hollow, and I Have Touched the Sky, which is these people who are living in like an original, sadder, creepier version of The Truman Show. So they're living inside this asteroid that's controlled by an AI, and they think it's a real world. They think that they're living on a planet, and they don't know that they're in this asteroid. And the asteroid is controlled by this AI, but it's benevolent. It's not trying to enslave them. It's trying to take them to a new world, right? Because their old world, the 10,000 ancestors ago, their world was being destroyed, and they built this AI and this simulated world inside this asteroid to get them to a new planet. And what happened was it had started to misbehave, right? It had a programming error, and that's how the Enterprise found it and all that. And eventually they let the AI complete its mission. They fix it, and they say, go on your way. And the AI is one of the very few times, I think, in TOS, you actually have a positive AI story.
Interesting.
Yeah, where it's not, out to kill everyone, and it's sort of, I don't want to say kind and generous, but it has a function that's a positive thing, and it actually does it, and it turns out okay at the end of the episode. You don't normally get that. So I think that one is notable for that.
Yeah, nice.
Usually these things go poorly.
Well, on the note of going poorly, then, do you see... I don't really... Internally, I'm not really putting the Borg in the AI camp. I don't know why.
I think because they have... They sort of make the point that they aren't really artificial. There's a lot of intention to go with the Borg.
They're cyborgs. That's where the term comes from.
Yeah, they also make the point. They're like, hi, we're both. Like, we're biological distinctiveness to your, biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. They are, that's their whole brand. So it's tough for me to think about them like AI, but you get the sense that the root species of the Borg, which I think we get kind of an origin story for them in Voyager. It's been a minute since I've re-looked at it, but they basically they sort of did what we're afraid of, which is they kept advancing this technology until they realized that they weren't good enough on their own and merged with it, and then decided to start doing it to everyone else.
Plus, I feel like the Borg it seems to me to be just very, very heavy kind of collectivist assimilation, conformity, technology type thing, as opposed to AI, where we're getting into all of the other issues that we brought up during the episode.
I think there's a long tradition in Star Trek, right back to the origin of it, and this was never said in the show, and it's not something from heaven help me, the canon, but one of the short ways that I think about it is humans got to be human, or humans going to human, right? And so when you think about some of the futures that we see depicted in other sci-fi series, we see cyborgs, we see regular people who are cybernetically enhanced. We see lots of that in a lot of shows. Sort of bionic man, bionic woman types. You don't see that in the Star Trek future, right? I mean, you see where Picard has an artificial heart because he had a problem, right? You'll see things like that, but you don't see people that think, oh, my hand, I just got it replaced with a buzzsaw because I just thought it'd be cool. You do not see that, right? Because there's this sense, I think, infusing Star Trek that humans got a human. Yeah. And it's not in our path to really do that. And I think the Borg are a really good example of that, saying, you do not want this.
Well, and also just, it's sort of exemplary of Gene Roddenberry's faith in humanity, that humans evolved, but they didn't see any need to change inherently because they evolved into better versions of what we see now. They don't see it. I'm always reminded of when they didn't want to. Patrick Stewart had a toupee and they had him read with it. And
what? I missed this. Like, really?
Yeah. I forget.
Yeah. Is there footage of this?
The toupee. Yes. I don't think there's footage, but I know there's pictures of him in the toupee as Picard, and it's not cute. But I think the toupee even has a name. But they had him read with it, and then Roddenberry ultimately decided no way. And when people asked, like, why? How can you be bald in the 24th century? Wouldn't they have fixed that? And Roddenberry says, no, we would have evolved beyond caring about that.
Nice. I do like that. I like Roddenberry definitely had that sense of boundless optimism for the capacity of human beings. Hence why in TOS they're always beaming down to messed up planets, because he didn't want any type of intergroup problem on the ship, which makes for less drama. But it also opened up this wonderful space for kind of Twilight Zone type issues where they go down to the planet where Landry runs everything and they get to explore that. All good. So before we finish the episode, I'll just kick it off with complete speculation here. Picard's about to come out. We've seen the trailer for Picard, and there's a brief moment with Brent Spiner. So presumably this is B4, who we last saw in Star Trek Insurrection. Do you think he's going to play a big role? Do you think are they going to pull a Spock because they downloaded Data's memories into B4 at the very end, but he's just singing "Pop Goes the Weasel." Do you think he's evolved since they were going to get Data 2.0?
I definitely made myself feel better about Data's death in Nemesis.
I'm sorry, Nemesis. My bad. Thank you. Yeah,
I conflate them too weirdly because they're very different movies.
I don't like either. But
that's another podcast probably. But I was pretty sad about Data dying, and I kind of just skipped over that when I realized that B4 was singing the song, and I was like, oh, Data's fine, he's in there somewhere. But I think the most recent Picard trailer made it seem like that shot of Data is maybe a dream.
Or a holodeck simulation.
Or a holodeck. But there's also a shot of them like unboxing a disassembled android in the trailer as well. So I think that it's possible, Data's relationship was so meaningful to Picard that it still haunts him, that Data is gone and sacrificed himself. But there's still 2 soon androids bopping around, and one of them has all of Data's memories. So I think B4 could potentially play a really big role. And I have to wonder if maybe, just given the other recent trailer that came out at New York Comic Con, if some of this season isn't going to be about agency and rights, because we see a shot of like robots being activated and moved off of an assembly line. And so some people have speculated that, maybe we're creating servant droids when this is not what anybody would have wanted, and this is very antithetical to Federation values.
Maybe Maddox got a hold of B4.
Yeah,
it's possible.
And Picard is very disillusioned with Starfleet at this point. This is also pure speculation, but I think we could see. I wouldn't be surprised if the droid that was deactivated and disassembled in that drawer was B4. A lot of people think it's Lore, but I don't personally. I just don't want to see Lore again, so I'm hoping it's B4, and that maybe he'll come to some kind of use, maybe join the crew, or just serve as an example, serve as a flashpoint for this debate about individuality.
I think there's going to be, and I'm completely jumping in terms. I have zero to back this on, but I think that you're going to see a reversal where my prediction, I think Picard will sacrifice himself for Data /B4 at the end, and it'll come full circle. That's my prediction.
They have flip-flopped in the trailer where Data is painting and Picard comes up behind him. They have flip-flopped in terms of like teacher v master. Data is there, and Data's like, how would you like to finish it, Captain? And Picard says, I don't know, I can't remember how. And Data says, that's not true, sir. So I think he's almost in the sort of sage-like position now, where the position that Picard used to occupy when he would guide Data through his witless exploration of humanity.
I so totally want to do the Darth Vader line, last time we met, I was the student and you were the master, right? But I feel, color me skeptical about where they're going with this in the Picard show, Heaton, only because I think in the previous seasons they've done the old switcheroo on us, right? So they made, like, for example, a big splash about Rebecca Romaine, who I think is wonderful, coming in to be the number 1 character, and she's going to be she's going to be great.
Scenes.
She came in, she ate a spicy hamburger and handed Pike a clipboard. So that was like all we got for a bit. And then she sat at the console and did some stuff, and she basically was not that big of a part of the show. They teased Spock for the whole thing, and we didn't even get him till like episode 7 of the season, right? I think like half the first
like
6
5
episodes.
or 6, but it was
a lot. You know?
I as somebody who did not want to see Spock on Discovery, who was like, ugh, not about Spock. I was just like, plumb new depths, please.
Yeah. So
I was looking at my watch around episode 5, being like, okay, come on, like let's get a move on. I want to see him. Where is it?
Yeah. You know, it's Mr. Snuffleupagus, right? I mean, let's get there. You know, let's see it, right? And so I think that when they bring back these old characters, I think they're going to be very, very judicious, because that's how they've been in the past, right? Okay. They'll say, yep, we're bringing back so-and-so, and you might get a scene or two.
Hope so.
You know, and not only that, but I mean, I think it shackles them into a lot of the lore and, heaven help me, canon of the show when you have these past characters in there, and I think they want to tell a different story.
I hope that's the way they go. I know people lose their ever-loving minds when they announce, like, oh, this person's going to appear. And, like, they announced Jonathan Frakes, Marina Sirtis, and people just collectively lost it, which is great. And I love those guys. But I want to see different permutations of where Picard is. And I don't want this just to be a victory lap for everybody who used to be on Star Trek. Because I really enjoy Discovery, but that's been my major difficulty with it, is that it has to deal with, this is a term my friend Dusty Stowe coined, it has to deal with a lot of prequel detritus. And I was just absolutely delighted when they got shot 1,000 years into the future, because I'm like, woo, it's all going to be new now.
So, I mean, you were a shipper for a long time with certain characters in the show, right? And I know right now there's a lot of angst about the Bev Picard shippers, right? Because
everyone is angsty now. Because
they feel like they're going to get a resolution. And I just think, I don't think you're going to get anything.
Janeway and Chakotay, too. There's like the Janeway and Chakotay shippers that are new to me on Twitter, which is so nice, because it's like 15 years ago, I was a huge Janeway Chakotay, maybe a little longer than that. In high school, it was like that, and so now it's like having
relationship, or is that what?
Yeah,
I was in the dark. And okay, yeah.
Oh yeah, pardon me. I'm sorry. This is deep nerd cut.
So this is what you would do: is you say, "Oh, these two characters on the show." Is
this how everybody else feels when I talk?
These two characters on the show. If you like them, you say, "Oh, I ship them," meaning I want them to get together.
And you write fanfic, and you think about it, and you talk about it, and you hope for it, and you make fan art, and all this kind of stuff, and then your dreams are dashed by the ends of series where characters do nothing.
But tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and cut it off, because I feel like we're opening up a whole.
No,
you're good. You're good. I feel like we could go for another 50 minutes on this topic. We'll do it on another show. Guys, it was delightful to talk to you about AI and Star Trek. We covered all sorts of stuff. Most of it I didn't think we were going to talk about. The Holodeck stuff was great. That was some fun ethical discussion. Thank you so much for coming on, Alexandra August and John Krikorian.
Very good. Very good. A+ pronunciation.
Thank you very, very much. And for people listening, where can people find you? Where can they find your stuff?
I am at ALX August on Twitter. That's ALX August on Twitter.
And your podcast is The Disco...
The Disco Trek, which is at The Disco Trek on Twitter. We're on hiatus right now, and we're kind of regrouping to see how we're going to attack Disco and Picard and stuff. Okay. So stay tuned. And I host that with Johnny Kolizinski.
Wonderful. And John?
And you can find me pretty much on Twitter, Facebook, and all the social medias at Trek Profiles. And I do a podcast called Trek Profiles, where I do deep dive interviews with delightful Star Trek nerds all about their fandom. And both Heaton and Alexandra have been guests on the show. So if that's the kind of thing you might like, this is the kind of thing you might like.
Great. It is really good, and you should listen to it or be on it.
Yep.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks,
Great.
gang. Heaton here. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as we did. And if you did, I would greatly appreciate it if you went on iTunes and gave a glowing review of Alienating the Audience. Here's why. Let's say I want to bring on George Takei as a guest. If I track down his people and I say my podcast is awesome and George Takei should come on, they're going to look at how many reviews it has. If there are only 3 reviews, they will shoot me. Just shoot me right in the leg with a pistol. But if there are 1,000 5-star reviews, then George Takei will come on. And maybe we'll sing karaoke. I don't know. We can dream big, though. So you can help me bring on cool guests by reviewing Alienating the Audience on iTunes. Thanks, friend. Listeners, I'm a comedian. A lot of my friends are comedians. One of my very good friends, Nick Sperduti, and I, we're something of the old school vagabonders when it comes to comedy. We do a lot of road work. We know each other from our improv team. I do a lot of stand-up. Sometimes we combine forces for improv. And most recently, we went to the planet Vulcan. We were there last week because we were doing some warm-up acts for Vulcan's Got Talent, and had we had a mixed time. Did you enjoy yourself, Nick?
Beautiful planet.
Yeah.
Beautiful planet. Could not have loved it more. I'll tell you what, welcoming, I think is the word I would use. I would say that I felt at home most of the time, genuinely just sort of, it was one of those things, when you feel like you're putting on a new coat that is a culture.
Which you could never do on Vulcan because it's so friggin' hot. You could never put on a coat. You know how hot it was? I don't know either because they refused to tell me in Fahrenheit. I would be like, how hot is it here? And they'd be like, oh, it's 72 degrees Celsius. And I'm like, that sounds very hot. Is that very hot? And they're like, well, I suppose for a human. And I'm like, you friggin' know I'm a human. Why are you giving me a hard time about this? I'm not evolutionarily designed for your place, and you're so smug. I didn't like it at all. I thought they were all really smug, and I did not find them welcoming, and it was hot constantly.
I'm just going to say I knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
I think we talked about it, and I said, hey, just so you know, Heaton, because I know how you get when you're humid, you hate it. I know that about you very well. I've seen you in many states. One of them is the humid Heaton state, and it's very agitated. And I told you right away, I said, this is going to be upsetting for you. Yeah. You're not going to like the heat. And you go, no, I'll wear cowboy boots anyway. And you did. And what happened?
I did.
What happened?
I was really hot. You wore sandals, and you were far more comfortable than I was. I'll give you that. Yeah, I wore the cowboy boots because I kind of thought it would be kind of like a flare where it's like they're like, oh, look, he's wearing human shoes, and it got some comments, but. It wasn't that humid. I'll give him that. Vulcan's not very humid. It is a dry heat, but I would estimate that it's at a good 130 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about where I would put it. So, you're not sweating as much, but I kept passing out from dehydration, two or three times. And I will say, to the credit of the Vulcans, whenever I did pass out, they were very agile and very quick to try and get me into a hospital and give me some kind of hypo spray to revive my electrolyte levels. So that was good, but it was I can't understate how hot it was, and I didn't connect with anybody there. Like, you hit it off with that Solak guy, but whenever I tried to talk to him, all he wanted to talk to me about was math. He would, what kind of math do you like? And I'd be like, I don't really like math. And then he would just stare at me, and it was what do you want me to say? What do you want me to say, Vulcan?
Yeah, well, Solak and Spirik and the whole family, I thought that they were really interested in how we do math as opposed to how they do math, because it is slightly different. But I just felt like maybe you weren't quite embracing it. I don't want to be rude about it, but it just felt like you weren't quite. Should I putting on a coat? Did I talk about the coat analogy? Did I already use that? Feels like you weren't quite putting on the coat that was the culture, but I think I already said that. So.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. And I guess the whole Vulcan traditions of quantum addition was interesting. But I don't know. Also,
you should have said that then. You never mentioned that it was interesting then. They would have loved that.
Yeah.
All you kept talking about was well, yeah, but I know about
Gilbert and Sullivan. I try to get him to get into Gilbert and Sullivan. They don't care about Gilbert and Sullivan. They don't care about it at all. They do have. There is Vulcan comedy. I'm going to be honest with you. It didn't do a lot for me. Okay.
So, now, come on.
Well, okay. Now this is. I will acknowledge this is a cultural difference. Okay, this is not a. I'm not saying Vulcan humor is better or worse than human humor, but it is different. So, human humor comes up pretty much out of vaudeville. And you and I trained over at UCB, so we've got some improv training. Vulcans don't have improv; that is not a thing they do. They do spontaneous math. But that's not funny. I think it's a whole different thing. And the jokes, the joke that killed with the Vulcans, because we went to Vulcans Got Talent, and Spelek, who got second place that night, he's going on to the next round, and I wish him well. Spelek's huge joke, I'm going to do as best I can. His huge joke was, have you observed that we illogically refer to that which we drive on as a parkway and that which we park on as a driveway. And then it was just dead.
That brings me right back there.
You were the only guy who laughed.
By the way.
None of the other people laughed. Like one of the Vulcans in the back shouted out, "That is indeed inconsistent." And I was like, "This is supposed to be funny." I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, you know what? It's one of those things. It's a play on one of our old style jokes, and I just really thought how like well structured it was. You know, I felt like not a lot of times do you hear jokes with grammar that particular. You know, I think that's something we're missing here.
You know what? I will say it was a well structured joke. It was a tight joke. He used an economy of words. I'll give him that. I don't know. It weirded me out. Like when I'm doing stand up, for example, I'm used to like getting laughter as the way of determining if I'm resonating with the audience or not. And like Vulcans, I think their version of laughing is cocking their right eyebrow. Did you pick up on that? Because they did not laugh during our set.
Yeah. No, but I got a lot of eyebrow cocks.
That's I guess
me personally,
I guess you did well. When
I came out and said something, I noticed. But you know what? I think this all comes down. I think you were really upset. You got nerve pinched. It was hilarious. The crowd loved it. I think you were really upset that you got nerve pinched, and then after you didn't know what happened. And I think that's still kind of bothering you.
Have you ever been nerve pinched? It's like a Vulcan's tasering you through your shoulder, and like, I don't even understand how it works.
I thought it was just.
Like okay, here's what I don't get.
It's something,
and I'm not contesting this. Like I have been dropped like a sack of potatoes by an 82-year-old Vulcan grandmother, and like it totally happened. I don't understand why we can't replicate that, because like you later on you tried to do it, which thank you by the way in the hotel room. You just snuck up on me and went nerve pinch and tried to get me, and it was kind of like a crappy shoulder massage. It didn't do anything, and like also why were you trying to nerve pinch me? Were you just excited or what?
Honestly, I've been trying all week on just on my wife and just random people that I've seen. I've been trying to do the little nerve.
Have you made any progress?
It's just nothing. No, it's just it may be finger dexterity. Mm-hmm. I think that might be one of my issues.
I could see that.
It's just something about
what?
How
Maybe
your shoulder has to be when you do it.
Maybe because the Vulcans have like, I'm not going to say they're telepathic, but they definitely have some kind of like, they can mind meld and stuff. They've got some kind of neurological abilities that we don't have. Maybe you have to have maybe it's like a little like a little dose of mind meld with a lot of pain, and that turns into the nerve pinch. I don't know. That I did enjoy. For that reason, I did involve their lucha libre. I thought that was cool. Vulcan lucha libre is actually pretty cool to watch. The costumes are magnificent. Yeah. They don't shit talk as well as human lucha libre people. I find our lucha libre much better at the shit talk. But they'd come in and go, I am Paldor and I will nerve pinch this gentleman, and then the other guy would go, nay, I am Hirkor and I will nerve pinch that gentleman, and it was kind of like, if you can imagine British lobsters trying to pinch each other, just kind of like angling back and forth until one of them finally did it, and then I tried to bet money on it. Apparently that was illegal, and I think that's why I got nerve pinched. I really should have. You asked me to research in advance if there was anything that I was going to do that might be illegal, and I went, nah, probably not, because I'm not. I'm careful about that kind of thing, and no, it turns out you can't do that. Also, cockfighting, that's illegal on Vulcan. They don't allow that anymore.
And I told you shouldn't have brought that with you. But also, I think I told you right away. As soon as you were starting to bet, I said, no, Heaton, that's illegal. You should have looked this up. We went through the whole thing. And then I saw her coming out of the right corner of my eye. I'll be honest, that little lady. And she just got you before anything could be anything. And I was, well, needless to say, I was surprised and
yeah,
kind of amused.
It was. Wait, can I back up? Because I brought the chickens and for the cockfighting, and like they're fine. By the way, anybody worried about Terrence and Nancy, they're fine. And
no, because they didn't let you fight.
Anyway, the chickens are fine, and I got them onto the shuttle because I said they were therapy animals, and so they were fine with that. I didn't have to provide documentation or whatever. But the thing that I wanted to bring up is there is no good barbecue anywhere on Vulcan. Or Mexican food. I spent
vegetarians. An hour. I told you this.
Yeah, but like, okay. Then why isn't there Mexican food? You can get vegetarian Mexican food. We didn't find any vegetarian Mexican food the whole time I was there.
because we weren't in Mexico. We were on Vulcan.
You can get Mexican food in California. You can get Mexican food in Texas.
Do not really drink alcohol. Yeah, all right. But that's not the point. That's in the United States still. That's like around Mexico. Vulcan is so far away.
What about that Mexican colony we went to on the moon?
Around the whole time. Yeah, but that still was closer.
Hold on, it wasn't Baja, Mexico. It was called like Luna, Mexico. Luna, Mexico is pretty cool. Luna, Mexico. I would totally do a gig there. Excellent food, 1/8 the gravity, adequate air conditioning, in my opinion. And I gotta say, if you want to get into cockfighting, there's pretty good cockfighting there. So like that overall would have been good. Oh yeah. Also, Vulcan television sucks. Vulcan television is just a series of what appear to be C-SPAN lectures about math, followed by live reads of 3D chess games. It's just these very serious men and women talking about 3D chess, and that's it. There wasn't any porn. There wasn't any comedy. It was just that.
I'm going to be honest. I know I don't say, much, but I think we need to revalue what you look for when we go to different places.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what you tend to look for is the some sort of meat or barbecue. You're
Brisket.
often looking for some reason cockfighting, which I don't understand.
Everybody needs a side hustle,
which is another thing.
Everybody needs a side hustle.
I just feel like if we kind of just go there and embrace the culture while we're there and put on the coat. I said the coat thing, right? We put on the coat of culture,
right?
And we just get into it.
Hold on. In defense of the porn thing, that's just a way to get to know, like, the tropes and stereotypes of the cultures.
No, that's never been a good way to start a conversation. I'm going to say that right now. In defense of the porn thing is not a way to start.
I think Steinbeck said you get to know a culture through its pornography. I think that was Steinbeck. And I was like, oh, okay, well, challenge accepted.
Really took that to heart, didn't you?
Well, when we went on that Andorian cruise, I had a great time, and I thought they had very tasteful pornography, and I overall really enjoyed it. Vulcan, just terrible. Again, it's just it was naked people discussing math and then discussing how anatomy works. I'm not even sure it was porn. I think it might have been some kind of, the math bit throws me off. It might have been some kind of like high school, this is your body and puberty thing, which, okay, that's the other thing. Can we talk about the incident?
Well, we're getting there, it seems like. Sure.
Okay, well, so Nick's happily married, and I am not. And so whenever Nick and I go intergalactically traveling, I like to hop on Tinder to see what the local talent is like. And swipe right.
I hate that you call it talent. I hate it so much. If we talk about that, I hate that you call it talent. Go ahead.
So anyway,
dude, say what you're saying.
Scoping out the Vulcan talent. Gonna try and get some pointy ears, and I swipe right, and some nice young lady who's like what was she? It's that kind of botany that takes place in water. Not aquabotany, a hydroponics. She's a hydroponics engineer on the USS Stellar.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I used to have some house plants, and I even it was going pretty well. And I thought, well, this is, for being on a planet that's 120 degrees with no alcohol, this is going surprisingly well. And then, oh my God, it turns out there was this thing called Pon Far. And we went to this amphitheater.
Yeah, we picked a bad weekend.
Yeah, we picked a horrible weekend to go
to Vulcan.
Oh, man. And now, in retrospect, I feel like I was getting used because she was already planning on mating with that Vulcan she'd been betrothed to.
Yeah, she tricked you. She tricked you into this situation. I saw the whole thing. That's why I stepped up. Because I had already made some friends in the community and tried to see what I could do to talk them out of this whole situation. Ended up fighting with you. I had to fake my own death.
Yeah.
And then we had to act like you killed me to win the rights to her, which then you gave to this other fella anyway.
Which I only did because you told me to do it. I kind of felt like I earned it at that point, but you talked me out of it. You were like, listen, man, you've avoided death. Just take the win. Yeah. Take the win. You don't want to do this, dude. If you sleep with her, you don't maybe there's going to be some kind of weird bonding thing. You don't know where this is going to go.
And I was like, I think it's worse if you would have had to live with it.
Yeah,
Because then you're not leaving Vulcan. There's no way they let you leave.
Oh God, you're right. If I dropped a baby anchor on the planet Vulcan, I mean, I'm a solid dude. I'd feel obliged to stay there, and I would always be sweating for the rest of my life. Yeah, I got to say, that was a weird Thursday night. Thanks for stepping up, by the way, because I don't think I would have pulled that off. I think that guy totally would have ripped my head off or decapitated me or something. He was clearly stronger than me, and when I was a young buck, I don't remember ever being that angry to a challenger for a young lady's wiles. I would, maybe one time I got kind of persnickety and said something unkind, and I think I threw a pint glass at a wall, not even a person. Like way back, right? But that guy, oh my God, I don't remember what his name was. It was like, I want to say Herman, but that doesn't sound Vulcan. I don't think it was Herman, but that's what's coming to my mind. That guy wanted to kill me.
Well, it was like Sybeck.
Sybeck. That
it wasn't Cybok.
No, it wasn't
Cybok. It wasn't Steinbeck.
No, it wasn't Steinbeck. No, I think you're right. I think it was Sybeck. I think that was his name. There's a lot of S names on Vulcan. I think maybe S is maybe it's like Mick or O. In Ireland and Scotland. I see, this is something I should have talked to them about when I had the chance, but there's a lot of S names.
No, it's probably for the best. But also, I'll say this. I'm pretty quick. And that's what really did it.
No, you're very agile, fast. And also, I'm really pleased that you made so many friends on Vulcan because they were able to kind of walk you through what was going on away and that I would not have been able to do. I just kept I'm not proud of this, but I shouted a lot of racial epithets when that was going on, and I was just standing there in the crowd shaking my fist going, "You goddamn green-blooded Vulcans, you friggin' goblins."
You kept going into the color of their blood, and I don't know why.
Mow down your old people with this weird axe, and they're not having it. That it didn't score any points for me at all. And it would have been.
I just don't understand why you had to keep insulting the color of their blood. I don't even know that that's a good insult. It's really not.
Yeah, I'm not proud of that. I'm not proud of that at all.
It's not a good insult.
Yeah, that was, actually, that makes me feel a bit better, Nick, because do you remember that one guy in the front row? He just kept going back. He just kept yelling back, "That is factually accurate, and that is anatomically correct." Mm-hmm. And that was, I don't know whether he was agreeing with me or heckling or what, but that was his response to the green-blooded thing. Anyway, I hope we get invited back. That was good money.
Well,
I'll take their money.
I'll take Vulcan money. I'm pretty sure that guy was also in the crowd.
Yeah. No, he was totally in the crowd. The only people up there were a different 80-year-old woman who didn't nerve pinch me, but looked like she wanted to, and she seemed to be running the show. I think she was like the matador or the conductor. Yeah. I don't know. She's like the orchestra conductor of the Death Vulcans, and then there was the woman from Tender who looked really smug, I have to say, and then there was that guy, I think Herman or Sybeck, one of those. That guy was trying to kill me. Who, you know what? Actually, I just got a Facebook friend request. So apparently, that's water under the bridge.
From him?
Yeah. He Facebook friended me. Only guy in Vulcan. So what? I think it's kind of like sometimes you get in an argument and then you blow out all the steam and you're like, actually, I like that guy. So I don't know, I guess I made a friend too.
Oh yeah. Oh, he added me too.
Oh well, that's cool.
Oh yeah. Oh, we have some mutual friends.
Nice.
Oh, 7 mutual friends.
Man, small world, huh? All right, Nick. Well, hey, it was fun. I didn't super enjoy Vulcan, but I'm glad I traveled there with you, my friend, and I can't wait for our next adventure.
Yeah, next time do some research.
Okay.
About what'll get you in trouble, maybe.
You do some research, what you get in trouble. All right, talk to you later, Nick.
What'd you say? What?
Nothing.
Bye, buddy.
That's the show. We did it. 3 episodes. Huzzah! Thank you for listening. Thanks, John Krikorian and Alexandra August, for being such charming and intellectually stimulating guests. Thanks, Taylor Stanbridge, for audio engineering. And thanks, Nick Sperduti, for being the best traveling companion imaginable on a trip to Vulcan, if you have to make a trip to Vulcan. We'll see you